Today we hear that wonderful line that God sent his Son to save the world. Perhaps we've had the experience of someone coming up and asking us, have you been saved? We use that word salvation and being saved sometimes without reflecting on it. Does it mean that when we die, we're going to be immortal? Yes, to some degree. It means that, but more. Does it also mean that the mistakes we made will receive God's mercy, that they would be healed? Of course. Does it also mean that the things that we lost in this world and maybe were shortchanged about, the Lord will make whole? Yes, of course. But today, this Feast of the Trinity reminds us that salvation is also about receiving divine life, living the way God lives, living God's life. And there are different aspects of that life of God that come into view as we think about our belief in the Trinity. The first thing is that we know that there are three distinct persons, and yet they're one. They're one God. It's a reminder to us in our lives as we appreciate each other's differences, that we are individuals and distinct, that we also should look for ways in which we build unity among ourselves, and that we don't, in a very casual way, divide ourselves from one another, but we always seek ways of unity. It's interesting that the work of unity does come at a price. We have to, in some way, keep our eyes focused on it, but also put aside the diabolical, that which divides us, a word that means itself slanderous, in which we accuse others, and we do it in such a way that divides us. So if we want to begin experiencing salvation today, we should put aside any attempt to divide us, either by making false accusations or ways in which we say things that are hurtful to others. We also see that this Trinity, this three persons in one God, also has the capacity to share life. They're almost, in many ways, dependent on one another. They make themselves vulnerable to one another, as the Father gives things over to the Son and the Son to the Father, and their life is enriched. It's a reminder to us as well that we do need one another. We should not begin to think of ourselves as self-sufficient. Sometimes when we write people off, the message we're sending ourselves and others is that we don't need other people, and that they in some way don't have anything to offer us because they disagree with us, or maybe they're different. The Trinity reminds us that we do need one another. It is when we have a shared life with one another and appreciate each other's gifts and talents, even though they are different from ourselves, or maybe at first may threaten us because they fill in the gaps of our lives. We still need them. And finally, it's interesting that this Trinity is called Father, Son, and the Spirit, which is the love between Father and Son. By calling God Father, it reminds us that it is the kind of love a parent has. So often when I see parents with their children in the park or in a store or on transportation, it's amazing to me how unselfish they are in making room in their lives for their children, being patient with them, especially if a child is sick or cranky, taking time with them to explain something, to kneel down to tie their shoe. Their whole life as a parent is dedicated to the child. It's a sacrificial love. And Jesus is telling us today that the Father has, in fact, sacrificed everything, given over everything to his Son, and given us everything as well, including his Son. And that provokes the Son to be generous and kind, to give his life for us and return it to the Father. And so today, if we're thinking about what it means to be saved, to have salvation, it's more than just having immortality, but rather it's having the eternal life shared with God in such a way that our lives today should begin to model that life yet to come. It is a life, first of all, that helps us understand that we truly are dependent on one another. Even though we have differences among ourselves, we should fight tenaciously to build unity in our midst. And that will mean that we love in such a way that includes sacrifice and not being afraid to make sacrifices for one another. Yes, today we celebrate the Trinity, but it's also an opportunity to celebrate the life that is given to us, the very life of God. And the wonderful thing about it is that it can begin today.